Hello and welcome to the Buckcast episode 23. Today's special guest is...
Hi, my name is Kyle. I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! For, a long time.
Yes, someone from the pre-COVID group. Unlike a lot of people we've had on recently. To brief explanation, you kind of had a brief hiatus from our group, at least, whether or not you were still playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And during that time, we got a lot of the COVID babies, as I like to call them, all these Yu-Gi-Oh! Players who picked up the game during COVID. You are not one of those people. You've been playing the game for probably longer than me.
Oh, I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Since 2005, on and off. Like I was playing, when the Kaiba and Yugi, like the structure decks dropped. Like that was I had the old Yugi structure deck and everything too.
How old even were you?
When that came out, I was 6 or 7.
You had object permanence, like you had a consciousness back then?
I mean, sort of. Like I remember like playing, at school and whatnot. Like my friend had like blue eyes, and I was like, that's the coolest thing ever. But like, back then none of us were apt to the rules, or it's very far removed from what playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Is now, but I still love it. That's never gone away, weirdly.
So you really have been playing basically since the game started, although you were playing the child equivalent. You actually started in elementary school. That's kind of an interesting generation thing, where you're pretty firmly a millennial then, right?
It's sort of, I'm like right on the cusp. I have children, so I age like cheese. So like I would say like millennial or whatever the one is after it. I don't remember.
Zoomers.
Yeah, like I'm like in between.
I am a Zoomer, and for me, Yu-Gi-Oh's peak popularity happened when I was like, I don't want to say peak because technically there's more players than ever before.
Yeah,
but it's like cultural literacy relevance was at its peak when I was too young to really be a part of that.
Yeah.
Whereas it sounds like you are right there.
Oh, I saw
but still old enough to be involved.
The Yugi movie, like in theaters, like I had, I was in there with my friends and everything way back when. As far as like competitive Yu-Gi-Oh goes, is like going to card shops and tournaments and trading, developing a real collection and all that. That didn't really start for me until about 2014, 2015-ish. I can't remember when exactly, but I think I was a sophomore or junior in high school when I really got back into it. And the first couple decks I played, I tried building, what was the first deck I built? The first competitive deck I really built was Burning Abyss. Yeah. And that's still my gung-ho to this day. Like, I'll always play that deck. I love it. It's really fun.
14, that was pretty close after that came out, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. Because I played before, like, the Bar support dropped. Like, it was before
you
Beatrice.
You were on wave 1.
Yeah, it was before Beatrice, before the fusion, before all that. It's like 20 traps, 20 BA monsters, let's go. Like, that was...
And that's, like, a legitimate... At that time, that would have been a tier 1 strategy.
That was a tier 1
or at
deck.
least
that's
tier 2, depending on what month it was.
That's why I wanted to play it, is because the deck I was playing before that was, like, my friend's jank, like, Cyber Dragon build that we just play in my living room, because we were all kind of getting back into it. I think I'm the only one who, out of my little friend group that we started getting back into Yu-Gi-Oh! At the time, like, stuck with it. I also dropped a lot of money that I was working at Sonic at the time, but Sonic funded my first competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck, and that's funny to think about now.
Sonic paid for you to play Burning Abyss.
Yeah, because I'm getting the Dantes back then. You needed 3 of them. They were $50 a piece. That was hard for me.
That's for me, my foray into like genuine tier 1 deck was all the way in 2019 with Salad, because it was a structure deck. It was cheap. Yeah, and I cannot imagine having to chill out $150 for my first ever competitive deck.
Well, the card shop I went to it's owned by a different guy now, but it was Evolution Games, and it It's still my home store. Like, I still go there when I can. I don't go there as much as I used to. But the people there were all playing. At the time, the format was like Burning Abyss, Teller Knights, Shadalls, and Cleaforts.
Yeah.
Where those are your meta decks of that era, I guess. And I still like try to play a lot of those decks too. Like I've showed up to our little group with like a Cleafort deck and just got my teeth kicked in.
I remember that.
But
I remember, didn't you play like Klee Cosmo at one point?
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
I'm very much a proponent though of trying goofy stuff.
I love goofy decks. That's like my favorite thing. I've actually gone to Epic, like the most competitive in our region, I guess, card shop.
Definitely
with the
notorious.
60 card. Yeah, they're super notorious for a good reason. I mean, they're very unkind to new people, as you know, the sweaty cretin like little group of anyways. The deck I built when I went there for the first time was like Ice Jade Mermail.
Ice Jade Mermail.
That was my because so after the BA era, Necros came out. I'm sure there's a very infamous ban list that hit around 2015, and it like nuked all of the decks. You know, they limited graph,
first
limited
like
tour guide.
murder lists ever.
Yeah, because they thought the format was too strong. Well, what this murder list did was just create a situation where Necros that was coming out at the time just curb stomped the entire format.
A perfect power vacuum for the tier 0 deck to emerge.
Literally.
That was
Necros to Genlock made me quit the game for like an extensive period of time.
A lot of people quit the game because of that.
It's not fun. Like your opponent just summons a little level 4 off of a ritual summon they did, and you just can't play. It's like, oh yeah, you can only ritual summon now.
You know, you can't even special summon is the restriction.
Yeah.
And you can't special summon at all unless you remove this guy.
Which you can't remove.
They have cards that help you prevent it from being removed. The one who you can pitch to stop it from being destroyed, and they have the one that stops the battle phase. So it's like,
well, and all the Necros too were like early sort of hybrid hand trappy cards, which was kind of their thing. But they just abused that card, and it was unfun because, like, you know, the recent tier 0 format, like tier limits, a lot of people talk about how, and I don't know if I agree with this, but like how skillful the mirror match is or whatever. That's not the case with Necros tier 0. It was just like, hey, you won the coin flip dice roll or whatever. I'm gonna make the Djinn, and you're not gonna play. Bye.
History of Yu-Gi-Oh!
Famous
series in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Space. Covered it a little, not too recently, but recently enough that it's in memory. What it was like actually playing that format. And just the fact that people unironically, like, gentlemen's out of the Genlock at competitive tournaments, which is, you know, not explicitly legal within the rules to do that.
No.
That's a thing that unironically was happening, not quite in mass, but pretty close. Just shows you how toxic that format was.
I have a memory. This is probably the last card shop or the last tournament I went to before I took a pretty lengthy hiatus from the game. There's a shop in like Joshua, like it's out there in the boonies, but like it was called Silver Gem Gaming, and two guys like almost got into a fight because they said they were like, okay, we're gonna just not play the Djinn here. They were both playing Necros. I was still trying to make BA work. I got, you know, X2 drop type shit. Well, I was just watching Top Cut, and they've said, okay, no Djinn. They're just gonna not play the card. One guy drew Djinn and was just like, well, so he how do you say this? Like, he did not respect the gentleman's agreement, I guess. So he played Djinn anyways, and this almost started like a fight in the card shop. Like, this is how toxic this stupid deck was. And eventually, I'm pretty sure, I don't know how long it took Konami to ban it, because like I said, like that's the last tournament I went to. I was like, I'm done with this. This is dumb. I don't want to play anymore.
Well, even after they banned Djinn and knocked Necros down, it was still the best deck, which for a while, which did not, even though the real thing people hated about it was obviously Djinn specifically, the fact that the deck, even without Djinn, was still a tier 1 deck left a lot of people, because a lot of people, like you said, like you, left the game when Djinn was such a problem. And then even after it got banned, it's like, well, what's the best deck? Necros. Oh, I hate Necros. Oh, Jin's banned. Well, I hate Necros, so I'm not going to come back just because.
You just don't want to see it.
Uh-huh.
Well, because the other relevant
memories.
deck at the time was like Ritual Beast, and I don't know if you know anything about Ritual Beast, but it's not very good.
Convoluted.
It's a convoluted like early iteration of a combo deck that we would see kind of expand, but like it wasn't fun to play or to play against, in my opinion. So like you kind of had this format where for a very long time, Konami did not know what to do because they'd created this monster that they refused to kind of kill because the Necros cards back then, like Necros Trish was making bukus of money, and they couldn't print anything that was stronger than it. Like I think it was probably the best deck until what happened in like Orcust or something came out. Like I don't know what the deck was that killed.
There was a lot of
I have
between those two things.
Well, I have like this is where the gap in my knowledge of the game shows up. Is like after Necros format, I draw a blank until like we get to like Drytron. Like I don't know what the hell was going on.
That's a pretty big gap.
Yeah.
When did
I know we went through Toss format. I know about that.
Well, like the Toss format kind of starts before Orcust. It kind of starts in like 2019, like just before. When was that exactly? Like the very beginning of 2019, maybe the end of 2018 is when that stuff starts. And before then, we have a bunch of other formats. You missed another Tier 0 format, Spiral.
Oh,
that happened before then.
Man, I wish I would have played during that.
But there's a lot of because that's the and you missed the Trident, the Zodiac format as well.
Oh yeah,
there was a whole. So basically, if I remember correctly, what basically happened, I'm sure our Yugi historians listening can tell me how wrong I am.
Probably.
Is that it was Necros, and Necros got dethroned by Zodiac. And Zodiac went through a lot of different variations where it went from being like Tier 1 to Tier 0. And then there were all these different variants that started competing because then the True King and Draco Slayer cards, all those came out and they started getting mixed with it. And so we had this, and then Link format happened. And that's kind of the bookend of Zodiac. That's what ended Zodiac format. It was a ban list that heavily addressed it and a new format for Link monsters.
That was the next like murder list, wasn't it? For Zodiac, it was.
Yeah, it was a murder list, but it's kind of funny to think about the fact that it was they just hit one deck, but that was a murder list because it was the only deck.
Yeah, because it was like they just banned Dryden, right?
I'm pretty sure they'd already by then limited Rapier, I think. The big thing is that they banned Broad Bull, the one that lets you search any card from your deck.
Yeah,
and they also hit Dryden, so they made the engine effectively unplayable. As anything other than I don't even know what you would do after both of those two cards got banned. So literally just completely gone.
So play something else.
Yes. And then that was the Link format, which heavily featured like Masterpiece.
Well, because
for a little while.
This now correct me if I'm wrong. This is like right when Link Monsters came out, right?
Yeah.
So this is what everyone was like, oh, play Links. Like that was very, from what I understand, like prominent by Konami. Like they really wanted people.
Well, how they made the rules is you cannot summon anything from the extra deck except to a Link point.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to summon 2 Xyz monsters, you have to make a Link monster first.
That's ridiculous.
That's how it worked. And so everyone who was playing anything, like I was on DDD at the time, and it's like Link's just completely killed DDD. DDD is a fun little bit of history because it came out right at the end of Zodiac format, and arguably, if not would straight up be better, would have competed equally with Zodiac. Because DDD, when it came out, was absolutely insane combo deck. Unheard of how good it was, compared to Zodiac, who's obviously more consistent, but the power level of DDD was just going to completely outshine Zodiac. And then Links happened, and suddenly DDD is poo-poo caca bad. Literally can't do anything. People still tried, like me, because that was the deck guy.
That's what you cope whenever your deck is like not good anymore. Mm-hmm. You cope super super hard. Because that's what I also had back to Necros, the fucking, because I'm traumatized. This is me just venting internal trauma at this point.
Good.
But I also the deck I remember, there was one tournament after the ban list that I played in. I did really good too, but I think I went top 4. But the ban list hit, BA was bad, and Necros had not come out yet, but there was this little window, this shining ray of sunshine, where we had the Monarch structure deck came out. And the Monarch structure deck for maybe like 2 weeks was you could just play 3 of a structure deck, and everyone was just playing Monarchs. Like the whole tournament. Everyone in top 8 was Monarch players.
I'm glad you brought it up, because Monarch was a very important part of that era.
Yeah, it was super fun too. Like that was one of the most fun decks that I think gets overlooked now, because it was its little window of like
it's a great mirror match.
It's so much fun.
You do have to remember it's just an extra deck lock.
Yeah.
It's not like,
but if everybody's doing it,
yeah. Well, again, the mirror match is like really fun. Also, it had some consistency issues, which makes it debatable how fun it is. But that was like the first top of the box. Technically, was Dino after or before that? I don't even know.
I think Dino was after that, but I might be wrong.
Because the Monarch, that was like 2016, I'm pretty sure. And Dino, I don't remember, whatever. But that was like a part of the beginning of an era of top of the box, where the structure decks were just so good that they completely overturned the meta, and it was like, you want a competitive deck? Do you have $30?
Yeah.
And maybe some couple extra cards here and there. Because even with Monarch, you could obviously just play it 3 out of the box, genuinely regional contention right there. But like for the YCS level, you had to buy like Karat, whatever his name
is. The light.
Some of the the light Monarch dude who let you pop cards to draw cards. And Extra Deck Monarch, which was eventually innovated from Monarch. That one was more expensive. Had a lot more working parts to it. But that deck, have you ever seen like Extra Deck Monarch?
No, I've never looked at Extra Deck Monarch.
It's so cool. It's rad. You played Seraphinite to get you an extra normal summon, and you'd pop your own cards that lock you out of the extra deck.
Yeah.
To go back into the extra deck.
With Karaz, and then you probably go plus off of it. Yeah.
It was rad.
I loved Karaz. Karaz was one of my favorite cards in that deck. But I just liked the concept of it. Like it was just fun. It was a fun deck.
Yeah. I played it too, but way after it was good.
I do miss when like meta decks felt really fun. And I think that I'm just gonna go on a tangent. They kind of like died because of combo decks. Like you look at things like Dragon Link and mainly just Dragon Link. But
Dragon Link.
Like it's not fun. Like meta decks at one point were very interactive, and like you weren't gonna OTK somebody or set up an unbreakable lock with Monarchs unless you like top decked Erupt. But I mean that's few and far between. And I think that's probably the worst part about the Monarch structure deck was that was the first time they started just like creating in-archetype skill drains, which kind of became, I think it still is an issue, honestly.
Yes. Well, to briefly bring it back to Ice Jade that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Ice Jade, they were like, what should we do with this? Let's give them worse skill drain.
Yeah.
Worse skill drain. Maybe that's an improvement. But worse skill drain. I think NBT made a whole video where he talked about how annoying it is that just so many archetypes, their main thing is just skill drain.
Yeah, it's like, hey, let me my entire archetype is based on me like getting out a Floodgate extra deck monster, or like, well, I don't even remember the name of the Ice Jade card, but Ice Jade was never good either. It's kind of just my little pipe dream of a deck that I kind of like. Or Ice Barrier, not Ice Jade. Is it Ice Jade or Ice Barrier? The one with all the, I can't remember.
They are two very different decks.
Yeah.
Ice Jade is the new one. They have worse. They're the ones like Aegirine, the card I showed you recently.
Yeah.
For Sword Soul, some players are playing it. That's part of the Ice Jades. They're part of the Vsauce lore part, whereas Ice Barrier is from Dual Terminal. That's where you got Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, And those guys, they all have like little mini floodgate effects.
Yeah, that's the one I played was Ice Barrier.
You know, that also sucks.
Because that's
similarly bad.
When I was playing Ice Barrier, the deck eventually just kind of evolved into like Mermail Atlanteans. Like that's just what it turned into because I had to keep putting cards from
that
there.
Are actually good.
Yeah. Well, and they're not good anymore. Like I was playing this very out of time. But yeah, oh my god.
What?
It's just a lot.
All the structure decks?
Yeah, I didn't realize there were so many.
Structure decks pulled out. I'm trying to remember what because Pendulum came out, which I'm trying to use this as a frame of reference in my head for when different things happened. I'm trying to find the Emperor of Darkness. Is that one? Yes,
That's it.
So Emperor of Darkness comes out in 2016. I was right. And that's when that starts. And that's during Pendulum, which is Duelist Alliance.
Yeah.
Which is where we got our BA and everything. So all that kind of happened in like 2015. Yep. That's on all that sort of 14, 15 area. That's when we got Duelist Alliance, when you are playing competitively.
Yeah.
And then you remember when the Emperor of Darkness. Nowadays, we just put the archetype name in the structure deck. It's a lot easier to remember instead of Emperor of Darkness. And then
there was also
Dino Fury wasn't until 2017. A year later, we had another top in the box.
I don't think I ever got to Dino Fury. Whenever I played Cosmo for a while in there, but it was like right after because Cosmo was also kind of like in a way Monarchs. They were good for like a couple weeks. You know, like they were not good for very long, but they were really good for a very short amount of time, and then they like limited Dark Destroyer, and the deck just died.
It was kind of because I've watched History of Yu-Gi-Oh. I now have all of this information in my head.
Yeah. About
what all these different formats look like, and getting them all in the right order, I still have trouble doing. But like Cosmo, basically, it came out. It was part of that was after the Necros format.
Yeah, it was like immediately after Necros format
that it was played, and it was played against Necros.
It was really good against Necros because it could get over.
They had no way of getting rid of it either.
Yeah, you just have this 3K beat stick that's not targetable. They lose.
Yeah, they had a lot of trouble with it. But that was all before. That was all forever ago.
Conceptually, too, Cosmo has to be one of my favorite decks ever. They're like, let's just print like Star Wars Wizard of Oz fan fiction.
A weird combo too,
with like a girl Darth Vader and giant ships and everything. Oh, I loved it.
I loved it too, very much. That's one of the things that I absolutely adore about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that they can do absolute bullcrap like that. It's like, what if, just completely unrelated to everything else, we just had Star Wars Wizards of Oz? Like, what if? And then they just did it, and it's amazing.
It's really cool because they've never tried to have like, and I'm not an expert with like lore in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think my brain is far too small for all of the pantheons of all of these random deck lores and how like, you know, the Cleforts and Naturias are related because of the secret tree that got destroyed by the Infernoids or whatever. Like it's too much for me. But I really like how all of these different decks can kind of just exist together and it just be this like beautiful, messy mosh pot of like art and shit. Because I don't think a lot of other card games don't really have that because they have like they do the thing that like Magic did, which is Magic is our godfather or whatever, has like the overarching world, where everything has to be right,
and everything has to be the same art style. And it's like, oh, wow, any of these two characters could interact with each other.
Right.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Has kind of transitioned towards that.
Sort of.
Most famously starting with Dual Terminal.
Yeah.
Where they had this, again, that's like literally exactly what you're talking about, how all the Naturias and the Ice Bears, they're all in the same overarching world. And they all have a similar enough art style that you can imagine them all being there together. But also they just haven't stopped just printing random one-off. This is its own thing.
Cosmos.
They haven't stopped making Cosmos. Shu Ship is like the modern Cosmo in a way, not in the playstyle or anything, but the fact that it's just not in the playstyle, but the fact that they just took what if we had this gimmick of art and story and just like went 150%. Do you realize how hilarious the Suships are?
Yeah.
They're literal warships made out of that are sushi. They are sushi boats, literal sushi boats. And there's a shipyard, and the Vanilla Monster has a Yelp review as its flavor text. Unironically,
Does it really?
Yes,
I
have
didn't
you-
know that. No, I didn't.
dude, it's so good.
I
Let me pull up DB. But also, there's like so many. One of the things that I and a lot of other people really love about Yu-Gi-Oh is they're also not afraid to really do the mechanics of the card, go with the art and like the story it's trying to tell.
yeah.
So the Suships again are I'll never. I don't even know how to spell Suship, to be honest. There we go.
There you are.
Yeah, so Gunkin Suship Shari, which means rice, means finally got to visit that harbor specializing in Gunkin Suships that I've been curious about for a while. The premium Shari here is limited to 2,000 Suships a year and uses specially developed moosh-aged rice, giving it extra boldness not found anywhere else. The classy atmosphere made my heart sing too. The Gunkin Suship served had the perfect balance of vinegar, nigiri, shine, and shape, demonstrating exquisite artisanship. The owner told me, we are introducing rich yellow, mellow, scented Edo front rice vinegar in the near future, which I'm really looking forward to. However, I was disappointed the surrounding seas were a little noisy, so giving it a 4-star with hope for improvement in the future.
They really just.
It's
Oh my
literally a Yelp
God.
review.
Oh, I wish Vanilla Monsters were more prominent than they are, because like stuff like this is just great, where they just have something
It's a lot better than check this out.
stupid. Yeah, it's better than like having 4 effects and a summoning condition.
Well, but anyway, but then you have that, right? Which is really locks you into what this world is supposed to be. First of all, the fact that he only talks about how great it is, and then mentions that the ocean was noisy, and gives it a 4-star, which is just hilarious.
yeah,
The humor of whoever wrote that is very good. But then you're actually making all of the Aziz monsters, which already is like you're making.
yeah, you're
dish.
making sushi.
You're putting the ingredients on top of each other, which is how you make sushi. And then they also have a couple other little fun things, like I think it's the field spell, where if one of them gets destroyed, your opponent pays life points, and then you can make another one.
So you're just at a restaurant.
Exactly.
point,
So
yeah.
it's literally it's supposed to be conveyor belt sushi. That's the whole idea. That's why they're in a shipyard and they're being put through, and you're putting these ingredients on top of each other. You are a sushi chef, and when your opponent eats the sushi, you charge them, and then you make them new one. They have a new card.
This is straight up a menu.
Yeah, there's literally a menu. And then there is Chef's Choice, where you can actually see it's just a rice shop, except there's a little picture of one of the sushi dishes. And what this card does is you pick a sushi from your extra deck, and you show it to your opponent. And then they can say any sushi card, and you add that one to your hand. But the reason why you have to show them one is because you are the chef
Right.
giving them a recommendation
Yeah,
on
you
what to
gotta-
order.
You gotta, I don't even know what to call this for a card game. But like
It's flavor, and what
It's-
you can call it flavor style.
it is. It's a flavor of a deck.
Uh-huh.
Deck full of flavor. I think
It is literally full of flavor.
And Yu-Gi-Oh has that more than any other, like, not even just card game, really, I would say. Almost
lot of
like
games.
intellectual property.
Uh-huh.
I think it has more variety in what it can do or what it does do
Mhm.
with your options as a player. Because, like, we're talking about sushi, like, warships right now. But I'm also, like, looking at a deck list for, giant Chinese dragons that all have their own thing,
Yep.
Tennies, Sword Soul, that sort of thing.
No,
It's-
it's a game with a lot of. It's very wide
Yeah.
in everything it can pick up, and also the fact that they stretch game mechanics
Oh, yeah.
to make stuff work.
They
We talked about before Birth. Cashtira Birth
yeah,
just lets you
Cashtira.
normal summon a level 7, which is like and against the most basic rules of the game. But it's like, we don't care because we're trying to accomplish something specific.
Yeah, and they didn't even put any restrictions on it or anything. They're just like, just go do it. If you would have told me when I was, like 8 or 9 playing, tabletop Yu-Gi-Oh at lunch or whatever, that like Kashtira Birth was a card, I'd have just been like, that's the most insanely broken card ever printed, and it's like the 7th best card in that deck.
That's just, but they did have ancient rules. I mean,
true.
It's not like it's that different. And then it's just, well, isn't Birth just only level 7s? So
I think so.
I mean, but the fact that Birth also has like good effects, like the being able to normal summon, level 7 is like the, just kind of like here is some extra little something on top. It's not even the good part of the card.
Well, you don't even need to do that because they all special summon from hand anyways.
That's true. Yeah.
That deck is ridiculous.
Power creep, it do be a thing.
Power creep in the game is crazy. Like we have gone so far.
Huh?
That's kind of one of the things that I had to like reacclimate when I came back from my initial hiatus. The power level of decks, like when I first played against like Julio plays like Dragon Links or whatnot, I was just like, when is it my turn? Because even the old BA combos, like you make Dante set 2 or 3 and pass, like that was kind of what you did,
and that was crazy.
That was a really good play. Yeah, and the only way to extend it past that was like drawing Soul Charge.
Soul Charge.
But like I don't know if that's like good for the game, but like all this design aspect we've just talked about, I don't think that like players are too good now and the internet's too broad and everything, and like there's not really a way for Yu-Gi-Oh to be designed in the way that I love where those decks won't be a problem sometimes. Like things like Tearlaments just show that, and Tearlaments kind of like the perfect storm concoction version of everything because they also, it's like, oh, it's gonna be a mill fusion deck. Cool. Awesome. Why do we like let Agito and Kelbeck and all those dumb cards come out at the exact same time?
Early tier, I think actually a lot of people liked.
Yeah, I still like that deck, but the Ishtar support, and then what was the other thing that was in the deck that's like really busted?
The Shufflers?
Yeah.
Yes, the Ishizu cards in general felt absolutely ridiculous. If this card's mill 5 cards. Okay, that's already insane. Yeah. Also, it's a hand trap that bounces a special summon monster. That's also wild. And then the Shufflers, it's just you can banish it, quick effect, shuffle 3 things in. That's a level of graveyard disruption that had never existed before.
No, and it's kind of everything it created because, and then the other thing that I found really weird about the way they designed the Tearlament cards is that there's no restrictions on them. Like they don't lock you into anything. I don't think they might lock you into fusions, but they don't do that.
No. There's no restriction.
Yeah. So like, why do we have? And even the deck that came out alongside of it, like Sprites, lock you almost immediately. No. Well, they okay.
The lock Sprite's weird.
Yeah.
Because it does have a lock and it does matter, but if you lock into level link rank 2.
Yeah.
The weird thing about Sprite though is how easy it is. Well, you can use that as an end to a combo. How easy it is to make all their guys.
Yeah.
Because all their guys just say level link rank 2.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can make an elf with a level 2 and any other monster before it was banned. And it's like, what terrified me is that people would play tier, and then you'd link the Merly with something for an elf.
Yeah.
Because you could just do that.
Yep.
And then you'd bring back Gigantic. Because Gigantic can then use Link 2s. And then you'd summon a Jet out of Smashers. And then you'd link them up for an Elf. Like you can just summon it twice. There's no restriction, obviously. And it's a Link 2, so you can summon it still. And then during the opponent's turn, it brings back the Merly to mill 3. I thought that was absolutely stupid.
It is. It's insane. And I liked the idea formerly of like cards kind of locking you into their own archetype.
Yep.
But it's like kind of fading away a little bit. And then I think that like the problem with Tearlament 2 is like the all the defenders will be like, oh well, it's the skillfulness of the mirror match or whatever. You're just keeping track of what effect has gone off and what hasn't. Like that's the skill in it because you got like all
There's-
these different names, and you've got because you have to. They're all once per turns, allegedly. If as long as you can keep track of it, but like, who's gonna be able to keep track of? Oh, did Murley go off, or did Rhino Heart go off? Did Kelback go off, or did Aikido go off? Did like because you're milling so much, like there's so many cards coming up, and there's so many effects being proxied. Like you don't. There's not really a way for anyone to just be like, is what my opponent doing actually legal in a tournament setting? Because like you don't have time to read every tier limit card in a match, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're
So, quickly in defense of tier. So, well, first of all, yes, it's definitely not a deck you can go up against for the first time and know if they're cheating. That's just not going to happen. That deck is way too complicated.
I hate that.
It
I
is-
hate that you just don't know if your opponent's actually playing by the rules of the game or not.
Now, you could be pretty quickly taught how to know if they're cheating. That's not something that would be, but you definitely can't go to a tournament and expect to be able to figure it out. You definitely would have to play. But the fact that it's a tier 0 is definitely one of the biggest problems with the tier format is it was definitely unfriendly to
new
players and even to
I'd say it's
existing
actively
players.
hostile towards new players.
Yes, and there's some funny images
Yeah.
that people love to post where it's the good old Chainlink 15, I think it was, that
Yep.
resolved in an actual tournament.
And like top cut of a regional
Mhm.
at that.
And it was like, yeah, okay, yes, I understand. But if you are a competitive player playing tier, which also I was really surprised, like I played tier.
Mm-hmm.
I played it for $100 and then $50 later when I added the Bystials.
How?
Because I didn't buy Planet,
Yeah.
which was $80, and you didn't need it. You needed it to be as competitive as possible.
Yeah.
But it's unsearchable even in the deck.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's not that big of a deal. And you are genuinely like, playing the deck I was playing, I played 150 total. I bought the dip on everything, so because I knew it was
Yeah.
going to happen. I was playing at almost equal competitiveness with these other Ishizu tier decks, or especially before the Ishizu cards came out. I was playing like equal competitive with these people because I was a little bit more skilled with it, especially because a lot of those people with the money to buy the full version also were trying to play Sprite, so their attention was a little bit split.
Yeah.
Whereas I was just ham on Ishizu specifically, the tier specifically. And it really is very skillful. And yes, you have to remember all this stuff, but once you get used to it, it's not bad. It's a part of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where everyone is playing a different game. I think I've heard this before. Someone mentioned, like, when you step into a Yu-Gi-Oh! Match, one of you is playing Connect 4 and the other one is playing checkers.
MBT said that?
I believe so,
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so true.
It's, yeah.
But the game you're playing when you're playing tier against tier specifically, that matchup,
Mm-hmm.
that game is a different game than Yu-Gi-Oh! But it's a pretty fun game, honestly. Now, if you're going in trying to play a certain type of Yu-Gi-Oh!, you're going to find that it is very incompatible. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is cool that a lot of the times someone can be playing Connect 4 and someone can be playing Go, and it works, and it just works out. But the tier, because it was so good, that wasn't an option.
Yeah, the tier limit player says, who can throw the table farther?
I enjoyed it playing that format, and there were so many little things. There was so much to do about, because they had a certain amount of interactions, but those interactions then flexed into other interactions. Depending on, and every board you faced, even though the deck was very consistent, it did not make the same board every time. Every time you loaded in, you're like, I don't know if it's going to be crime. I mean, you'll know based off what they search or
You
whatever.
know they're going to go into Kelk. And then,
But you know, you're going to have like a root. They're going to end on, maybe it'll be a Root Kalos with the Salic, with the Kaleido Heart, or maybe it'll be a Root Kalos with a crime, with the Havness in hand. Whatever. When you start the game, you don't know which inboard you're going to end up with. And also, it got even weirder when you added all the Ishizu cards, and now we're both milling cards. And it's definitely not for, if you came into play this certain sort of Yu-Gi-Oh!, you're gonna hate it. And I fully understand, and I fully respect people who like, that's not the Yu-Gi-Oh! I want to play.
yeah.
Fair enough, it's banned. You don't have to worry about it anymore. But when it was a thing, I genuinely really enjoyed that version of Yu-Gi-Oh that I was having the opportunity to play.
Well, but like we were talking about earlier, part of the appeal of Yu-Gi-Oh is all of the different decks and strategies and archetypes. When you have one that like is just so obviously far and away better than everything else, yeah, it like you can enjoy that mirror matchup and everything, but like, why can't I play my other fucking like? Why can't I play?
Well, that's why
my deck into this and it'd be fair, right? But see, this is the other thing is like I don't think, and I don't have any know of what goes on the inner workings of Konami and why they release cards when they do or what the schedule is like, all that the logistical things. But why on God's green earth were Tearlaments released and then in the next set was it Ishizu?
Yeah.
Like you see that like the synergy is obvious. Like the synergy hits you over the head with a brick.
Well,
like it.
By the time those products were announced, we'd already seen it in the OCG.
Right.
And the OCG had a much wider gap between those two products.
And they should have.
Yeah. And I actually do agree. Yeah, there should have been a longer gap before we got the Ishizu cards. Because before the Ishizu cards, it was just tier 1. Like there was other things you could be playing against it.
Its sprites were really good into that matchup. Like the matchup was very skillful. Like that's a skillful matchup where both players don't have to be playing the same thing. But then you drop the Ishizu cards on top of it, and you're essentially giving them a second engine that just benefits from what the cards were already doing.
Yeah, it just went over the top for sure. And here's a thing where I definitely am a proponent of Yu-Gi-Oh! Needs to have more formats.
Yeah.
I think this is one of the main... We just splurged about what we love about Yu-Gi-Oh! Which is all well and good, but I think one of the primary weaknesses of the Yu-Gi-Oh! As it exists today is that the problem that there is only one format, realistically, if you want to play, in any sort of competitive sense, which is standard, which is the only thing you're going to be playing at every regional and every local, and if you want to do anything else, it's a fan format or whatever. That's changed a little bit because of Master Duel and then the sanctioning of all these other styles.
Yeah.
But they haven't gotten off the ground. It is my personal opinion that there's nothing wrong with the tier 0 Ishizu format happening because a lot of people, including myself, genuinely enjoyed it. The problem is all those other players didn't have anything else to do.
Right.
Except lose to it. They didn't have a choice of what version of Yu-Gi-Oh! To play. Whereas if we had I think, for me, the golden number here is 3. You need 3 different formats, minimum, that are fully supported, and if you go to a Yu-Gi-Oh!, talk to Yu-Gi-Oh! People, they're like, oh yeah, I can jump between these 3 formats easily. And because that way, whenever one gets knocked out, right, you still have a choice. You still have the better of these 2 options. That's why I think it needs to be 3.
Right, but then the tricky thing here is like one of the things I've noticed coming back, especially looking at like how Edison has become more popular, and I think that's great, but you notice that the popularization of the Edison format didn't really happen until after, and I'm talking very broadly, after Master Rule 4, because until that point, like Edison is just an older format of the same game.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't think that the way Konami structures the game is in line to cater to older formats until they have a Master Rule switch. And I think it comes back to like monetization because they want people buying the new product. They don't want you playing BA in 2023.
Well, here's something that I have talked about before, my grand plan on how you could make this work. So for me, if I got to pick what those 3 formats were going to be, it would be standard TCG, like we already have.
Yeah.
Master Duel, except I would change Master Duel.
Mexi.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
But in general, I'd make it softer around the edges because it is the new player paradise.
Yeah.
It is the place where the majority of people who do not have an established community and are getting into the game will go first. And that's why I think it should be a lot more kid-friendly.
Do you think it should be best of 3 in Master Duel? Do you?
No. For a couple, I think they should have events that are best of 3.
Yeah.
But I think it is reasonable for the standard game to be best of 1 But they just need to change the ban list to balance around that, which they have not done.
Oh, the ban lists in Master Duel are like
Weird.
They're really bad in my opinion. Like I don't like the Master Duel ban lists at all.
Anyway, and then the third format I think should be Legacy. But if
Yeah.
there's a specific way they can do it, or rather, Time Wizard format is the official name. There's a specific way they could do it that I think would be in line with their interests of moving product and also help create a more unified enjoyment of their players for it. Which is, I think, they should pick, or rather sponsor, a specific format for a specific length of time,
Yeah,
and then they move on to another one.
because the history of the game, it's too broad for it to, because if you have legacy format, it's like, oh well, do you want to play Goat, Edison? Do you want to inflict self-harm and like recreate Dragon Ruler format, or like what are we doing here?
There are so many different options, and it usually, if I understand correctly, what's actually happening right now is that we are getting pockets where, this local, they always have an Edison thing.
Yeah.
So they have people playing Edison.
They
And then
have,
this other local, they do Goat. They play Goat format. And then this other local, maybe they play some weird thing you haven't heard of. Like,
but then at that point you leave it up to the discretion of your card shop owners, which can be very good or very, 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 very bad.
leaving it to the discretion is how we get these little pockets. But
Yeah,
that doesn't really help move product at all. Because now you've got all these different pockets of all these people playing different things. And what product they're going to buy, who knows? It depends on which one. But if you have this unified, hey, this month, we're all playing Goat.
Yeah.
We're all playing Goat format this month. However they're going to do that, whether or not they have old rulings or whatever, that's something for them to decide, whatever. But we're all playing Goat, and we are going to release products for Goat format leading up to this month.
but the products would have to be like new sets from Konami, because if you're selling old Goat formats,
So they're reprint stuff.
right? So they would have to
They're
release
reprint
new
sets.
reprint sets for the legacy
And
format.
for me, I think the obvious thing here is you can have structure deck, basic structure deck, right? That's like Goat format structure deck. And maybe it's like a 2-deck thing. That way, even after the event's over, you have 2 decks, so you can still play with another person.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm thinking like you buy a product that's 2 decks, and just like standard Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like you can buy 3 of these to have a really competent version, or you can just buy one and it's good enough to enter a tournament with. And maybe it's something like $15 for the 2 of them, whatever. And then they have a pack opening set where it is for max rarity cards in the format.
Yeah.
So they have something where it's like, oh, this set has collector's rare delinquent duo.
You.
Well, Goat format, like
No, I
it's
know.
got collector's rare delinquent duo, graceful charity, pot of greed, and it's like, well, if suddenly all of these people are being indoctrinated into the format because that is the current format, some of those players are going to want to bling it out.
Yeah.
And also, if you make it cyclical, like, if it's every month, we're playing a different one, maybe a month is too short, whatever. That's that sort of thing they can do tests and try to figure out what the right length is, whatever. Or people can argue about. But whatever it is, like maybe we break Yu-Gi-Oh! Up into basically 12 formats, and every month is a different one of those formats. That means after a year, we're back again.
Yeah.
And they can do it all over again. So it's not like you just get rid of the card. It's like
Yeah.
you don't feel bad for buying the product because you can always just ask someone, hey, you want to play this format together again? And they might be interested. And even if not, you can just wait till it rolls around again, and then you can play it again.
Right.
That's my crackpot theory on how we
That's-
can make legacy format better.
That's idealized Konami right there.
That is, you're right.
Because they won't. I mean, because you got it.
You can
And
also
I think
tie it in
it's
with
a
Master Duel.
great. No, you can, and then that's where I would put what do you call it? Like the indoctrination of like legacy format into the general populace. I think you could start that. It really should start with Master Duel.
Yes.
Legacy events in Master Duel, because like Master Duel has this thing where they don't really acknowledge like the TCG or the OCG.
Yep.
They
pretend to be their own little thing.
yeah, and I'm just like, that's so weird to me, because you still have the best decks in the TCG and the OCG, like sprites are dominant in Master Duel right now, and they will be until the release. Like the only thing Master Duel acknowledges from the real world, I guess, is like the release date of the sets. Like the sets come out in order.
Yeah, that they do in order.
So
which is, even then, it's kind of loose.
right, which means we're about to get just smacked in the fucking face with tier. I'm sorry, I don't think I've cursed this whole
Yeah, that's
podcast
fine.
until just now, but tier limits are just about to smack us in the face for probably. I don't think they'll let it go on. They won't, right? They're not gonna just let
It
tier limits run
completely
rampant.
depends on what they're going to do. If they release tier without Ishizu cards, they could let that go on for a while because not that is not that despised.
Yeah,
Because then it'd be like a tier 1 deck competing with Sprite, and
Mhm.
Sprite has a lot more tools in Master Duel specifically that might help it be a little bit better. And then halfway through, they can release a list that tones down the power level of those two. But if they're releasing it with the Ishizu cards,
I don't.
then
think
that's going to be
There's no way they release those sets at the same time.
who knows.
And you're right. Nobody
Master Duel's been
knows.
weird.
They are weird, but like that. That's asking them to like kill their own game.
Yeah, which is a distinct, scary possibility. But what you said about them recognizing having events that are the event game, how they're doing the events right now, where it's like they've already started repeating them
Oh, it's terrible.
with the Xyz Festival and
Big
stuff.
Seas Festival is just like Numeron Turbo. Like,
The
that's all it is.
chronology thing, or anthology, whatever it was called,
The anthology.
where that one was awesome.
yeah.
Loved that. In our format, when they did that, that was awesome. Really liked that. But I think you're right. They need to tie it in more with the other. So they should have one that's just like, a legacy format. Like they started adding old cards.
Yeah.
That are banned, like Pot of Greed and other stuff that now work. So you can kind of play GOAT in Master Duel.
With your friends.
With your
or
friend.
whatever.
So they should just like polish that up and make that an event. Do GOAT format as an event.
Yeah, but no one's gonna want to like drop the UR points on like GOAT format cards because like Pot of Greed has to be.
Well,
a UR.
just make it a permanent dual room option.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Now, right now, they only do dual rooms while the event's going on, which to me seems kind of goofy.
Silly.
Just leave it in there. I mean, for some of the more niche rule sets, I get getting rid of it, like Xyz Festival.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. People
Like
don't
the
need to.
synchro festivals they do and
Yeah.
stuff.
But when it's something like the anthology, I think the anthology that can just be in the dual room tab forever, and people will be happy with that until they've labbed the format out. And then like I think they should just have one that's just GOAT format. That's just is what it is.
Yeah.
And then like every however long when they get back around to the format, they kind of update the ban list to tweak it a little bit. So eventually that means it would diverge from the true legacy format. But guess what? If you play GOATs right now with other people, it's a toss up whether or not you're going to get GOATs or you're going to get modern GOATs.
What is modern goats?
So it turns out, despite people having played GOATs as a legacy format for literal like years and years, it turns out that those people weren't taking it very seriously.
No,
They
never
were-
have.
They were playing, but they were playing just what was good and not really thinking about how it could be improved. They were trying to play fun decks in GOAT format and what decks just were good. But during the pandemic, a bunch of people started playing GOAT again, especially because the pandemic format, a lot of people did not like it.
Yeah.
Because of the Adamantipator and Eldritch and stuff that was going on.
It was gross. It was kind of a gross format.
So a lot of people went to GOAT format, and a lot of them were genuinely competitive players that were like, I'm going to crack this format open. And they did. The top cut of an actual GOAT like prize tournament looks nothing like what GOAT format did.
Can you pull up a list of that? Because I kind of want to see it now. I want to like see the
I think
difference.
the goofy trap decks are like genuinely actually good in GOAT format. The problem is that there are still a lot of people who like playing GOAT format as it was. That's gonna give me some weird stuff.
progressive goats.
Progressive goat. It's kind of goat beef for it. Let's see if we have anything funny in here. That's a pretty standard goat list.
Yeah,
Old school.
got your.
Pretty normal stuff to do. GoatFormat.com.
Do
I
these
don't
kind of formats, do they play the Chaos Emperor Dragon with the errata or no?
They usually play with whatever the text was at the time. Okay. I'm getting a bunch of dumb normal stuff. Anyway, people, trust me, bro.
But see, like,
where's my source? Trust me, bro.
this is the only thing that, like, kind of scares me about, like, something like you said, like, rotating legacy formats, is I think the only two legacy formats that have any traction in the community right now, it's because of, like, years of propagating. I don't know. It's like the only legacy formats we really think about as a community are, like, GOAT Edison. You know? Like, what other, like, no one wants to go back and, like, play Dragon Ruler format.
This got first place in the tournament.
This is
GOAT.
cracked.
And you're looking at it, you're like,
Trap,
that's
draw,
not
shoot.
GOAT.
It doesn't look like what GOAT player plays Ryoku. This thing. I don't even remember the name.
Well, you can summon a Pyramid Turtle.
Yeah,
Ryokoki.
Ryokoki.
And that did see play, but the Dust Shoot saw 0 play in GOAT, to the best of my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy's main decking 3 of it. And Judgment saw almost 0 play. And people figured out, oh, Judgment's actually cracked.
Yeah, Judgment is really good because...
And also, you never used to play like this many 3-ofs that this deck is playing. We're looking at a deck list from a tournament. But suffice it to say,
really
they're
good.
playing something a lot more degenerate, even than we thought GOAT was.
Yeah, there's no degen here.
But like that, this is what modern GOAT looks like. If you go to play GOAT like at a tournament where they're cash prizing, you'll probably run into stuff that looks more like this. Like this guy, he's playing Wave Motion Cannon.
That's crazy.
This guy
to
got
me.
first place at this tournament. This is the GoatFormat.com Championship Series 12. And it's like, that does not... This looks more like a GOAT format, the second place list. But even then, it's like definitely very distinct.
This is like Monarch Goats.
The 3 Cold Wave, people didn't play that.
Wait, what is his Cyberstein target? I need to know.
They just
Oh, it
didn't give
doesn't
us the
show.
extra
They
deck.
don't give
That's
us the
so
extra
sad.
deck list.
What the heck?
Oh, if you're gonna post
well,
your deck list, everybody post the
Actually,
extra deck, please.
during Go format, there was no extra deck cap, wasn't there?
I don't think so, but he still has targets.
Well, he's got the entire all fusion monsters, bro. All of them.
Was that really? Was
I
that
don't-
really how that was?
When
Did
was-
you just have? When was the extra deck limit?
Yeah.
That was pretty early on, because then people would just play. I don't even know what the good fusions were back then, honestly. I was playing like Flame Swordsman.
That's weird. You go get a deck size. Since 5D? What? Surely it was
That's
earlier
right.
than
No,
that.
it was because remember what Grass used to be? Like people would just play like 100 card plus
No,
decks
that
and
was
try and
that was
play
not
Grass.
grass. Grass came out after the change. What the heck? I don't know. When did Yu-Gi-Oh put 60 card? That's not what we're talking about, but yeah. Let's ask. See what Reddit thinks. When they added the 60 card limit, people do not appear to know.
40 plus good card. There's a lot of discourse here.
No one's giving me a date. Cool. Thanks, guys. If you showed up with a stupidly big deck, you would get disqualified usually because it was impossible to randomize your deck.
Yeah.
That's how they used to do it before the deck limit was officially implemented.
Well, it's also impossible to judge because, like, you could, if you're playing 4 Pot of Greeds in a like 300 card deck, like
Who's
who's gonna
gonna know?
call you?
Yeah. Whatever. Suffice it to say that the limits did not used to exist, and people figured out how to, and eventually people started abusing it, and eventually they fixed it. But I don't remember when that was. Whatever.
So, back to your legacy,
Sorry.
your legacy format pipe dream here. If you were gonna like try to, if you were gonna try to, I guess, put some legacy like formats back into the public sphere, I guess is a good word. What would you try and like bring back? Like, what would be one of the?
I would start with the famous ones. So
Yeah.
you've got to start with Go.
Yeah,
That's just...
We'll
Yes.
go. I'm taking Goat and Edison for granted because, like I said, those are the only 2 legacy formats in Yu-Gi-Oh that people
People
really
actually play.
clamor for. You know,
So I think you'd start with those two, and then I'm going to disregard. I'm not. This is not a claim of how good I think these formats are, but I do think it would be the correct order to do it because of how notorious they were.
They're trying.
They're trying.
They're trying.
Which I think would be the next one would probably be Dragon Ruler.
Yeah.
Even though not necessarily a good format, I think that's the next big one that people remember and very memorable.
I would play a Dragon Ruler format.
I would too. I'd give it a shot. And then also after that, I would probably do something like Hat. Hat was pretty famous.
Yeah.
People have talked about Hat for as long as I can remember. People playing Yu-Gi-Oh, and then probably Duelist Alliance.
Yes, sir.
A lot of people like Duelist Alliance.
I love the Duelist Alliance was such a healthy competitive. Like, I don't think I would still be playing Yu-Gi-Oh if that weren't my first competitive format. Because it was so fun. Like you had the Pendulum deck was. You could argue that pendulums were not balanced because the master rule is different. You could play scales outside of your trap card zone. Yes. Yeah, that was kind of cracked. But like you had your Xyz decks for BA and Teller Knights. Then you had your fusion with Shaddoll, which the Shaddoll BA matchup is still something I love to this day.
Yeah.
And then like you had your pendulum decks. Like all of the major summoning mechanics were really prevalent. You could play any deck you like, It was that kind of format.
Now, to be fair, people who were before Duelist Alliance introduced this concept of not dying.
Yeah.
Where all of these, they just all float, and the games go, you just never lose resources, and that's how you win. Which, for people who played Yu-Gi-Oh! Before then, competitively, a lot of them view that very negatively, as this paradigm change in the game that they didn't like. Now, for someone like you who's getting into the game at that time, and for a lot of us looking back, it's an amazing format. But I am aware that at the time, it was actually, a lot of people did not like it. They were like, oh my gosh, the game has changed so much. This is a fundamental, which it was. It was one of those big moments where the game permanently changed. I think we will remember in hindsight Power of the Elements as being one of those as well.
Yeah.
Where Power of the Elements really solidified just good archetypes. Their cards just also are hand traps. Like, hand traps are just, like, part of the game. They aren't, like, a thing you choose to or not to add. They're just inherently part of every engine is some amount of hand trap being able to do stuff on turn 0.
Even back then, like, and I think the only prevalent hand trap in the Alliance format was Veiler.
Yep.
And because that was the only one. Like, that was...
I think Droll was out, but people didn't play it.
Droll was a card, but it never saw play. Same thing with DD Crow. Like, DD Crow was always a thing. And,
I remember, I think...
And, it's kind of crazy to me that DD Crow did not see...
a thing at that time,
Maxi was... Yeah.
Was that 1?
No.
Oh, was that 3?
Maxi was at 3.
Okay.
Because that was the whole interaction was like, you have Maxi, but then also Called By, I don't think...
No. Called By came out way later.
Really?
Called By the Grave is a way later card.
Really? We didn't have
that's
Called
Link
By
format.
I'm trying to remember what the counterplay to Max C was back then. I guess there just
there
wasn't
was
any.
one.
Yeah.
I don't think there was... I think it was banned before they even printed a counter to Max C.
That's crazy.
In the TCG.
Because Max C got hit around the time that, like, Necros was coming out, I think. I don't know when Max C went away.
It was at 3, and then I know it got put to 1. I remember I briefly played when Max C was at 1. And then it got hit to 0, which people were very happy about. But then it was like way after that, the first card that countered it that came out was Ash Blossom.
Yeah.
That was the first one that countered it, and that was after it had been banned already in the TCG.
And then Ash marks the paradigm shift for hand traps as a whole, I think.
Ghost Ogre also was pretty significant.
Ghost Ogre was a little different. Ghost Ogre came out, and I remember a lot of people thought it was bad because it didn't negate, for a while. It was considered like, oh, look at this. And it was expensive,
but it
too,
was
when it came out.
Really good in Pepe, by the way.
Dude, don't remind me of Pepe. I forgot about Pepe. We didn't even talk about Pepe, and we're going through all of these. Oh, this was good here, and this was... But, like, Pepe was the tier 0 that kind of persisted, because, like, Necros, was whatever it was, and then it fell off. But, like, Pepe was... Monkey Pepe board, like...
Well,
that was...
first ever emergency ban list.
Yeah, because they had to hit what was it? They hit what is it called? The sorcerer guy thing. and
Sorcerer
keyboard. No, they hit
Guide.
monkey. No,
I'm pretty sure they hit Monkey Board and they hit Wavering Eyes, I think.
yes, 'cause Wavering Eyes was.
I think they hit a couple cards. I think they might have also hit Fleshfire.
That would be a fun like podcast episode you could do, just like ban list history.
Yeah, no,
'Cause,
I
like,
thought about it.
The ban list has gone up and down, and Konami has this like very weird way that they do ban lists where they'll like they give incremental ban lists, right? Like you're getting, oh, this ban list wasn't that big, like it doesn't shake up the format that much, and they kind of just like have little splashes of like balance or balance changes, and then eventually like you just get the nuke, I guess is like what you would call it, like the tier limit ban list recently was kind of that.
Back when the end of Toss
Yeah,
was a
The
quote
end of
murder
Toss.
list where they absolutely destroyed the format.
because like that was the only decks. I mean, like Thunder Dragon still is not recovered, and neither has Spiral. Like those two decks are still not really playable because you don't have Master Plan Spiral. You don't have Colossus.
Spiral got banned out of existence after its Tier 0 version,
Mhm.
and then it was competitive again when Magician's Souls came out. It was a Tier 1 deck, and then they hit it again because
They
everyone
had
was
to.
sick of it. Yeah, oh my gosh, Spiral. I remember I was not technically a competitive player
Yeah.
during that time because I was still on like DDB nonsense. But I was going to locals when Spiral versions A and B during both of those, and I was like, that deck was crazy.
Yeah.
It's also hilarious to think that at the time, that meant Trigate Wizard plus the dude, what's his name even? The Sleeper with an agent attached. That was absolutely, and it was genuinely at the time, that was like the most insane thing we'd ever seen. And it was like, that's like a negate and a pop, and they had really good protection effects. That was it. That was their inboard. Now, to be fair, again, at the time, that was absolutely ludicrously insane. And part of the reason why it almost came back again was that what made Spiral good was not the like in-archetype disruption per se.
Yeah.
It was just that they could generate like near infinite link material. And at the time, the best thing to do with that was just Trigate. And then later on, stuff like Appaloosa had come out and all this stored other cards
IP.
that made better use, and you could like Gumblar maybe, I think, might have been around still at that point. Whatever. There was better things to do with infinite link material, which suddenly made that deck possibly good again. Yep.
It still honestly could be like the day. Do you think they ever
They
like?
unban every. Well, in Master Duel,
Oh, I know.
it is a lot less hit. I think it is still hit.
No, you can. Well, they just it's. I think they semi-limited the field spell, and then no Master Plan's a 3 in Master Duel,
Yeah, that's
which is insane
Well,
to me.
but
because
again-
Master Plan is one of the most insane cards I think I've ever read.
Yeah.
Like you just read it and you're like, why is this a card?
Oh yeah, the fact that it's like, add 2 cards
Add
when
2
this
cards
guy goes to the
plus-
graveyard, and also when
and
it
you
gets
just
summoned,
send
it
it
does
as link
stuff.
material. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that's just wild, huh? But yeah, Master Duel just already. I think I mentioned before. I really thought that Master Duel was unsolved,
It still is.
and I think that it's getting better because of certain tournaments being hosted by people like MBT and other more. Well, they're cash tournaments that have like actually decent cash pricing. So people are actually taking it pretty seriously. And I think we're finally getting to see what is actually good in Master Duel.
I'm trying to see what. Okay.
Oh,
It was bothering me. I was.
sorry. Looking at this deck list again. But yeah, Master Duel, I think it's very unsolved. I do think Sprite is the best deck.
Hands down.
I don't think that's disputable.
It's
Even though there's a
probably-
bunch of nonsense FTKs, I don't think they're as good as Sprite.
I think it's Sprite, but then the cool thing right now is that Sprites, you could still make the case at higher ranks, like Adamancipator with 3 Block Dragon kind of poops on Sprite a little bit.
But they play so many hand drops.
Yeah, but again, it's like you get to the point where the top tier decks in Master Duel always come down to like dice roll.
That's a little,
Because-
that's part of the problem.
Yeah, because there's no siding, right? Like you don't have like if I don't go first and my opponent is playing Adamancipator, and I don't draw at least 2 interruptions, like I just hard lose.
Mhm.
You guys are trying that riff.
I don't know if I mentioned this podcast before, but some of my like podcasting platform that I use, it's like, oh, you should add background music, and I'm like, it's already in here. I don't have to do nothing. It's free. Anyway, but
I do
if
want
we-
to see what the top decks in like Diamond are, because like when I play Master Duel, I think I could get to Diamond with like a tier limit list or something. Not tier limit,
So-
Sword Soul list.
looking at Master Duel meta, which is not a perfect, but it's good enough to get a vibe of what is going on. We have
Yes.
Sprite and Runic Sprite, which is not surprising because it's Master Duel, and that's the sort of degenerate stuff they have. And then they appear to have marked nothing as being tier 2, but they have a bunch of tier 3 decks. Interesting.
That's strange.
And then they've got Branded Despia,
Still
Live Twin
very
Sprite,
I have
Punk,
that.
Exosister, Sword of Sultani, Spiral. There we go. They think Spiral is a tiered deck.
Spiral is still a really good deck, and no one plays it though.
Labyrinth seems like it's pretty high represented as a Sky Striker, although they don't think it's tiered. Mathmech, Flunder. Flunder feels, I don't know why that's there. Like, I don't think they have Barrier Statue anymore.
No barrier statue is banned.
So I feel like that's cool.
It's crazy to me because they banned barrier statue before they banned Protoss,
Yeah.
which is wild,
Well, Protoss isn't as good as Investor One, which is wild.
right?
The fact that it's just not as good, anyway, I think this is cap.
They also put a lot of like very problematic cards to 2 in, and I guess it works for cards like D Shifter kind of, but like if the card's like that, it either needs to be at 1 or banned.
Yeah, they do weird stuff. Anyway, but yeah, so. And then we got Eldritch here still, Pure Runic, Tri-Brigade Sprite, Adamancipator. There you go, Adamancipator, people getting Diamond 1 with it. Agents for some reason.
Some cope here because
There's some wild stuff.
like dinos do not work in Master Duel at all.
Yeah, they're so hit for some reason. They've got a ton of stuff on the ban list because OCG hates Dino for some reason. They got some Infernoid, Adishnister. Yep, so if we just look at what they claim the tier list is, first of all, they claim it's
Runic. And
oh,
Runic
okay.
Sprite.
Branded they think is 2. Okay, so it's Runic and Sprite is tier 1. Branded Despia is tier 2. And then for tier 3, they've got Tri-Sprite, Runic, Mathmech, and Sword Sultani, which seems fair enough.
Yeah, I don't see why
Although
Adamancipator should be in here too.
Adamancipator, I feel like another wacky combo deck should be in here. But, maybe there has... Oh, well, we've already been talking for an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, we should probably
wrap it up.
So again, my name's Kyle. I might come back on here. I
hope so.
I enjoy talking. This is fun. I really had a good time with this.
I liked walking through a little bit of the history of Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah.
I think that's something that we Yu-Gi-Oh! Players can be proud of, is that the history of this game is very dynamic.
More so than any other card game, I don't know enough about Magic, but I think Magic is the only contentious one with it. But like Pokemon's history is not nearly as varied as we are.
Well, I always thought it was really interesting. Quick aside before we wrap up, that you hear about certain decks and how crazy powerful they were, like Dragon Ruler, like a lot of these other decks, and then you kind of like look at the history, like actually look at it like all laid out.
Mm-hmm.
You realize that the power creep actually did this weird thing where it would spike, and then it would go back down a lot. So like it's not this. We like to think of power creep as being this gradual, pretty straight line. But in Yu-Gi-Oh, ours is really peaky. We have a lot of just suddenly this format, this absolutely insane, and then it drops way down the power level.
A lot of the formats will go from like having 3 or 4 like really good decks to just having one that just is like god tier.
Uh-huh.
It's like we went from like what was the meta before tierless? Like, and I'm talking like a little bit farther back, but like Drytron, Tri-Brigade Pranks to and then a lot of those decks got hit.
Mm-hmm.
Tri-Brigade not as much, it kind of just fell off.
Yeah.
But pranks don't have Meow Moo, which is crazy to me. And then
free my boy. I don't know
yeah,
why he's
literally
still on there.
free Meow Moo, bro.
He does not need to be.
He
on
does
there.
not need to be banned. A card, and it. I mean, you can put him at 1, put him at 3, but like a Link 1, I think, and I hate Link 1s as a concept. Like, fuck Sky Strikers. If you're a Sky Striker player, fuck you. You burn in hell. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know what got into me there, but like. Pranks were designed very obviously that they need a Link 1. And if it's not gonna be Meow Moo, it needs to be something
At
else.
least their Link 1 doesn't search the field spell or anything. It literally just helps them remove a dude.
Yeah, it's not that good of a Link 1 either, which is crazy to me. Like, if they were gonna ban anything or like limit anything, it should have been the bird. The bird
The
deserved
Doodle
it.
Doo?
Yeah,
the Doodle Doo is
Doo.
pretty good. But I mean, I it's just the fact that it's like the power of like double Raigeki. At the time, sure, that was insane.
Yeah.
But like nowadays, like come on.
Yeah, they're just gonna
This
plus
is
off
not
of
that
it.
good.
But you go from like very varied like formats to just tier limit tier 0, or back with my format that I really love, the Duelist Alliance. You have BA, Shaddoll, Cleafort, Teller Knights. They nuke that, and then it's just like, oh, Necros is tier 0 for a while, and then everyone hates the game. Because I think those random spikes of having random tier 0 decks are what kind of like inhibit the growth of the game, because you have like a lot of new people getting into it and everything, and then like look at our little group, like a lot of them have dropped the game since tier limits came out. So like, just stop, Konami, please stop like just printing random tier 0 decks, like it or
I disagree with you slightly. I think
slightly.
Well, there's definitely a real danger. I agree that tier 0 decks are just unfriendly to new players. Straight up, no cap.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. But I also think that there are a significant amount of Yu-Gi-Oh players that genuinely enjoy tier 0 formats. Especially if it's a certain deck they like. Now, this one, I think probably tier limit is going to be remembered with Zodiac.
Oh yeah.
As one of the tier 0 decks that people genuinely look back on and like try to play the mirror matches for. Because Zodiac is one of those things. To this day, there are people who like talk about how much they loved Zodiac format.
Weirdos.
And I think the same thing is going to happen for tier. Now, no one's saying that about tier 0 spiral format. No one's saying that. No one's pretending that that format is actually good. But with stuff like Zodiac, and I think eventually tier is going to be in the same boat.
Yeah.
Where there are some people who genuinely remember this is a good format they really enjoyed. But you're right, it is so hostile to new players. But again, that's why I'm saying we gotta have three formats.
It's not just hostile to new players, it's hostile towards a lot of existing players. Like, look at me, like when Necros came out, I literally dropped the game. Like, a lot of people just...
It's also
like, wow.
It's just hostile to more casual, or even just people who just don't like that particular deck.
Right.
It's very... The word I'm looking for is, it's very divisive. Polarizing, that's a better one. It's very polarizing, which, you know, it's not bad every now and again if that happens, because it's not like it's permanent.
But it feels like it's on like a cycle. Like we have really diverse formats, and then it kind of compounds into just, oh, well, now there's an explosive new crazy deck that just kind of makes all of these older decks that people were playing and were invested in obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so the Necros, you get your what was it, Zodiacs, you get your Spirals, you like those kind of decks. I don't think are ever healthy for the game because they inhibit. And I think the reason, and this is completely off the wall harebrained, but I think Konami is trying to like recreate what was captured with Dragon Rulers, because that was a tier 0 deck that made them a lot of money, that didn't have interest drop in the game immediately. Like it was.
Well, I think
it was somewhat healthy.
You could play cheap Dragon Ruler.
Right.
That was a thing that people were doing.
It was like budget Dragon Ruler was a deck, and like now it's to the point where if a tier 0 deck drops, everyone's like, oh, here we go again, and then they just kind of check out.
I wonder how much of it's just because the market works so differently nowadays.
Yeah, you have a lot more, like you don't have to go to card shops and swindle Johnny for a blaster
also,
for
there's
$30
a lot more, like,
or whatever.
Scalping.
Yeah,
a lot more of
and that's not good either.
And a lot of, like, if some deck is going to be good, it's not like the price of all their cards go up uniformly, like what you would expect if it was a normal free market.
Except for cashiers.
Cashiers is wildly expensive. But what happens actually is that when a deck gets competitive, all of these marketing people, they pick one card.
Yeah.
And all of the price spike goes into that one card, which makes it
Like
balloon
the field
way
spell
more.
with tier limits.
Well, like the field spell with tier, that was just because it was the higher rarity. But, yes, it ballooned even more than it probably should have because these marketing people saw it as the investment. I wonder how much Yu-Gi-Oh! People's enjoyment of it is modulated by this subset of people. I've actually talked to some of these people, but who are more on the market side of it, and they're kind of influencing these things. And I wonder how much of that impedes other people's ability to enjoy the game.
Like your vendors that like really make a living off of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's like they are doing some stuff that every now and I think that part of it can just be solved by having those people in mind. Like for specifically tiers, they made the obvious chase card the field spell, which you don't need to build the budget variant. If they'd made the obvious chase card Rhino Heart, for instance,
the deck would
you know what you could not play the deck without him.
Well, and even there is a budget field spell too, which is crazy. Like tier limits have 2 field spells. I don't even think people know that.
Oh yeah. Well, the other field spell's a lot worse.
It's terrible. But it's like, hey, if you want one, here you go. Mm-hmm. Or you go spend $90.
So I think they had that in mind, and I think that also helped a lot more people be able to enjoy that format, is because they had budget players in mind.
But instead of making the tier 0 formats like budget accessible, why don't we worry more about just not creating tier 0 formats? Is kind of the counterpoint.
I feel like there's just no. I think I'm pretty sure people
like look at how this format could have been if the release schedule were a little bit different. Like you could have sprites were always good, like before alphas hit and all that. Yep. So you have sprites, tier limits exist, and then I think what really drove the tier limit deck to be so far and away greater than sprites was the Ishizu cards.
I definitely
so if you have Kashtaras come out before the Ishizu cards ever touch the TCG, then you have a very, in my opinion, what could have been a very like interesting format of Kashtara sprite tier limits with no Ishizu cards.
I think how they could have done it, and probably should have done it, was instead of having the 6 months of Ishizu tier that we had, if we cut it down to 3 months, if we delayed that product 3 months, we would have had, I think that would have been 4 months total, of this tier sprite format, where that version of tier people generally are looked back more favorably on. And then we would have this short tier 0 format that would only be 3 months. And then
we could just not have the tier 0 format.
I think there's a interview about this where someone was asking Konami local representative.
Konami talked to somebody?
Well, it was one of the dudes who went to an event, and he's like one of the works on like a team here, like either I think it was like the LA office, whatever. Some dude who works at like the LA office of Konami, and he was talking about how they recognize that there are people who like tier 0 formats. They like full on were like, we realize that some people like very diverse formats, and we realize some people like very closed formats, and we want to be able to appease both of those players. Now, some of those interviews have aged very poorly and clearly are not what they're doing anymore, so that's not proof or evidence. But I definitely think there are subsets of players who prefer narrow formats and players who prefer wide formats. And I think they very intentionally alternate between these very narrow and very wide formats.
But the difference is that I don't think anybody is like, no one, maybe there are people that like prefer a tier 0 format to a diverse format, but I don't think people ever stop playing the game because the format is too diverse. Whereas when you have a tier 0 format, it's the exact opposite. People run for the hills.
I think you're right. I think that if we're concerned about people leaving, then tier 0 definitely has more negative than positive.
Well, even from a business aspect, like you got to think the sales on a more diverse format are probably greater because more people are playing. Well,
I think you're right.
Yeah.
The tier 0, people have to buy the tier 0 deck, whereas the diverse, part of what makes it diverse is that people aren't buying new cards. They're showing up with decks they already had. Maybe they're tricking them out a little bit with new cards. Yeah, so, from a profit perspective, I think tier 0, but you have to keep your players happy too.
Right.
So you have to, this this method where we flip back and forth. I'm saying the tier 0 in this particular case could have been shorter. And then Kashtira, because Kashtira already was going to dethrone the tier 0. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it would have.
It's, in my opinion, and the opinion of several other people, the Kashtira would have moved it from tier 0 to being tier 1, because Kashtira so perfectly counters tiers specifically.
With you just can't go full
zone lock, Macrocosmos, bro, you're done.
Yeah.
There's no winning against that. You no shot. And then you've got to play all these side deck cards in the main deck to beat Cash, and now you've made the tier engine way less consistent.
Yep.
And now suddenly all these other decks have the possibility of competing, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. And then all you need is some minor hits to tier elements, and suddenly it's a very fair 1.5, whatever. Enough hindsight, right?
Yeah. we're just spitballing at this point. I think
there's a lot of it's really interesting. It's really interesting to think about how they could manage the format differently. And just with even like this podcast, all these people I've talked to, we can't agree.
Yeah. No.
The players can't agree what is the best way to do it. So it's not surprising that Konami hasn't been able to figure it out either.
Right.
But I think that the thing we like to say, Konami bad, and not talk as much about what they should do. And I think if we spent more time arguing about like what optimal looks like, keeping in mind all of these different sorts of players who all have different demands and needs, and whether or not what will make them leave the game, what won't, blah, blah, blah. Managing all those and having more long-form discussion about what that means. Because it's easy to make a shorts video talking about tier 0 bad.
Yeah.
And it's not as easy to make a video being like, there's these some players that like this sort of thing, but we have to weigh that against the players who are going to leave if it's a tier 0 format, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm proud of it.
Because it's kind of, so you get to the point where it's like, the people who show up to locals, like, I think you have two subsects, right? Mm-hmm. You have your casual players, and then you have the people who are deep pockets, take the game very seriously.
Yeah.
Like, there's a very stark divide that you'll start to notice if you play Yu-Gi-Oh! For long enough between the two.
Yep.
Now, all of these, the more competitive players, as we're going to, group them up together, they really look down on more casual players, right?
Yeah.
But if I have a tournament where no casual players show up, and it's just 8 of my best, most competitive players, like, that tournament's gonna fucking suck. Like, it's not gonna be, no one, like, even the competitive players are all just gonna be pissed at each other.
Yeah.
So, like, you have to keep those casual players invested in the game and give them options. So when you alienate them, the format gets more toxic, and the format is less fun for the people who stick around, anyways, when you drive away those casual players. So I think I do think that it's good to, take into account everyone's needs and desires and everything, but we have to keep the player base diverse, right? Or the format is like really, really boring.
I think I would almost kill to find out the numbers on like.
Same. No, I know where you're going. Like, I'm like, oh yeah.
Well, I really, really want to know, like, who gets them the most money? Like, how much money do they really get from competitive players versus casual players versus literal children?
Yeah.
Versus retail stores not knowing what to put on the shelf, so they just buy it.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many different kind of paths that the money comes in that I genuinely find it difficult to try to piece together where is most of this money coming from. It's like, I don't know from their perspective which of these groups they should value more, because I don't know which one makes them more money.
I don't think that. And here's the issue with like the competitive player, like pushing towards that tier 0 format, kind of like catering more towards them, is that a lot of the competitive players are not the ones buying sealed product, right? Yeah. Like they're the big ends on the resale market.
Yes. Like
that's where they're getting most of their cards from. So I'm wondering if like the way that the cards get out normally is just like casual players buying things and then selling, I pulled the what is the field spell for tier limits called? The
Paralino.
Paralino. I pulled Paralino. I'm going to sell it to this, really sweaty dude at my card shop for 70% value or whatever, because I just pulled it and I might as well just
and then
get
how
the
much
money
of
back.
It is just the card shops who just buy and open huge amounts.
Yeah.
To resell, and then it's how much of it is literally just convincing them that it will be good regardless of whatever else, because that's the only way Konami makes the money.
Mm-hmm.
It might be that the card shops end up kind of smoothing out the bumps between when cards are suddenly more expensive or not expensive, and that to Konami it makes no difference. Who knows? I don't.
I don't know.
That's part of their business model, that it's kind of closed off to us.
Well, and Konami, and that's one I wish more of Konami's information regarding sales and stuff were public, but that's an entirely different.
That's an entirely different thing.
Like topic.
I'm pretty sure Konami's a public company in Japan, but I don't really know.
In Japan.
So I've tried to look through some of their documents before that I could find on the internet, and I couldn't really get enough information to figure out what I wanted to know. Very funnily, though, I know that they have a lot of pachinko gambling machines, right?
Oh.
Yeah, they do. That's Japanese companies for you.
Yeah.
They have a lot of gambling
Like
machines.
gacha games type?
No,
like-
like genuine, like gamble,
Like straight up slot machines?
Well, in Japan, slot machines are illegal. But a game called Pachinko, which is basically slot machines, is legal, where you can win fun prizes that someone next door will just happen to want to buy for exactly the same amount of money every time. So definitely not gambling.
No.
Anyway, so I know they're in the Pachinko game, and I was reading through this quarter report or whatever that I was able to find.
It's just
And it-
Counter-Strike
and it-
skin slot machine.
And it broke up the categories, right? And then I'm reading through these categories like digital entertainment. Okay, I know what that is. And there's like one that was like console is what it said. It's like apparently they still make consoles in Japan that some people still buy. And like physical games that some people still buy in Japan.
Yeah.
Apparently Konami still domestics makes plenty of sales in those areas. And then there was one that was like adult entertainment. And I was like, what on earth does that mean? That must be the Pachinkos.
Yep.
And then I look at the next category and it says Pachinko. And I'm like, what the heck? What was the adult entertainment? Turns out that how Japanese companies work is you go real wide. You just kind of buy you'll just buy a host club. And then if the company starts going south or whatever, you just sell all that sort of properties.
And then you keep your core.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
So
Oh.
apparently that's just the way Japanese companies work, is that they have whatever their core actual business is. And then whenever they have a good year, they just start buying up a bunch of weird little businesses that they can then sell if they have a bad quarter. So apparently that's normal. So apparently they literally own maid cafe sort of like host clubs and stuff. That's apparently normal. Anyway, that was just a fun little. I tried to find the numbers, and that also should tell you like how confusing it's going to be, even if we had the numbers.
To sift through all of it.
It's like the way Japanese companies work are just so fundamentally different than what we are used to in the West. Being able to truly gauge what is and isn't good for Konami can suddenly be very difficult.
Yeah.
So we're like, this doesn't make any sense. It's bad for the game. They're probably losing money.
Because they have so many different markets that they're catering towards too.
Yeah.
Because we're not even talking about like the European TCG
Yep.
or they have South American TCG too. Like it's
Yeah.
all over the place.
Well, then the OCG isn't just Japan. It's also a couple of the
Korea
other
and
countries in that
China.
area.
Do they still do business with China even?
I
Like,
have
is there
no
an
idea.
OCG in China? Like, I don't know.
Well, I also know from talking to some people that they sell product to the Middle East. So it's like there's Yu-Gi-Oh everywhere,
So
and it
it's-
looks very differently in
Okay.
different places.
I don't even know if Palestinian Yu-Gi-Oh is TCG or OCG.
I'm pretty sure it's TCG.
It's just it's Asia technically, right?
No?
I don't know.
Anyway,
All right.
thank you
think
for
we're
coming
good.
on.
No
I
problem. This is
appreciate
really
it very
fun.
much. I hope to have you on again
I
sometime.
do too. My name is Kyle, and I have nothing to plug, everyone. So it's if you want to find me, my phone number is. And then just
Goodbye.